Morning, Shandy. How are you?
Hi, boss. How are you?
Thanks very much.
Morning to you.
Take care. I used to go to a wonderful church that was part of the Baptist denomination in a town called Bushy. It was rather imaginatively called Bushy Baptist Church. And there was a businessman there called Peter. Every now and then on a Sunday, Peter would come up to me and hand over a couple of newspaper articles on business, on media, current affairs, on work, stuff he thought that I'd find useful for my job. I wonder, is handing over a couple of newspaper articles for a friend ministry, or is it just a nice thing to do? Of course, it wasn't a big thing to do, but still, it did take him time and effort. He had to cut out the newspaper articles, he had to remember to bring them in, and he had to give up some of his fellowship time after church on a Sunday to hand them over. And he had a pretty big job and 2 teenage daughters and some responsibilities in the church as well. He didn't have to do it. Grace is like that, isn't it? Grace doesn't have to, but it does. Grace is always on the lookout for opportunities. Love is like that. Love doesn't have to, but love does. Love is always on the alert for possibilities. Last time we saw that God can work through the tasks we do every day, the things we have to do, the job, the chores, the shopping. We've seen how they fit into God's mission, and we've seen how we might do them in a godly way, and how indeed they can serve and bless others, contributing to their flourishing. This session, we're going to build on that by exploring what ministering grace and love might look like on your front line. Now, I don't know what comes to mind when you think of ministry. Perhaps an evangelistic initiative or some big project, looking after the homeless, working with teenagers, counselling someone, or staying up all Saturday night to help clubbers who are rather the worse for wear. All fantastic things to do. But ministry is not just doing big things. At root, ministry means serving others. Ministry is love in action. Taking a moment to engage with a checkout person, noticing the invisible people, saying good morning to the bus driver or the platform attendant on the tube, or getting up early once in a while to say thank you to the people who empty your bins, offering to get a sandwich for someone at work who's just too busy to leave their desk. Remember the story Jesus tells in Matthew 25? The righteous say to the king, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Ministry is as simple as giving someone a cup of water. The principle is clear. We serve Jesus by doing small things as well as big things for others. Actually, you've probably had the experience of someone coming up to you and telling you about something you said years ago that was so helpful, or telling you about a card you wrote when they were going through a hard time, and actually you have no memory of it at all. You think they've got the wrong person. When did I ever do that? You just did it, and God used it. It's not always like that, of course. Sometimes we know we're going to have to go out of our way. And we do need to consciously ask for God's grace, His empowering presence to help us keep going, or even just to get started. Still, ministering grace and love is at root about generosity, generous living. It's about taking the focus off ourselves and proactively thinking about how we might help someone. It's about pricking up our ears and opening up our eyes, being on the lookout for opportunities to serve someone at the school gate, for the new parent who looks lost, or the colleague who's clearly not doing that well, or the person who's been absent for a while. So yes, it's about acts of kindness, but love is more than kindness. Love is about wanting and seeking the best for someone else. And love is expressed in a whole variety of ways. It could involve taking the risk of helping a difficult person see that they are being difficult. It could involve praising a colleague who's your rival in front of the team because actually they did do a good job. It could involve being kind to someone who is habitually unkind to you, loving your enemy, loving the ogre of Buckinghamshire. It could involve, well, here's what Peju did. When Peju first started turning up at the school gate with her oldest child, it was a pretty dispiriting experience. It's often the way, isn't it? Everyone else standing around chatting gleefully in cosy little clusters. She felt really lonely, but she didn't want to force herself on anyone else. So she prayed to God and she asked him to show her the people that he wanted her to be friends with. And over time, he did. Grateful for that grace, she decided that she wanted to be someone who would reach out to the other people standing on their own. She didn't have to, but she did. And that's how she came across Ade. Ade, who always seemed to be in a rush. Ade, who would briskly drop off her son and scuttle away with her little daughter. Ade, who always seemed to be on her own. Peju discovered that Ade's husband was overseas working in Rwanda and that she really didn't have much close family around. That must be exhausting. And then she realised that half term was coming. 9 straight days without a break. Peju thought somebody needs to give her a break. Now Peju didn't know Ade that well, but still she said, "Give me a kids for a day." And she invited her over to spend time with her and a friend. So she came. They chatted, they cooked, they sent a Western Union wire transfer, they relaxed, they laughed. And as the day drew on, Peju gave Ade a hand massage. Mums, she said, mums do so much with their hands. Peeling potatoes, doing the laundry, wiping bottoms. And they need to recognise that their hands are a gift from God, a gift to their children. So as Peju massaged Ade's hands, praying as she did so, it was a way to honour all that Ade had ever done with her hands, and a way to put life, bring life back into those hands. Peju didn't have to do any of that, nor did she have to start a regular discussion group for mums, and not just Christian mums, in her home. Grace is like that. It doesn't have to, but it does. I suspect there have been times when you've given people on your front line the equivalent of a glass of water and not really thought much about it. But I wonder whether God might show you some particular way that you might extend grace and love. Perhaps inviting that misfit of a work colleague for a drink, calling up a person who's been sick to make sure they're okay, offering to weed your neighbour's front garden because you know they can't do it anymore. Now I began with a story about a man who cut out newspaper articles to help me in the work that God has given me to do. And I began there because it reminds us that we can probably all find ways to support each other on our front lines. Yes, in prayer, but perhaps in some practical way too. One woman and her daughter baked a big batch of her spectacular brownies for her husband's work team when they were going through a crisis. They didn't have to. Grace doesn't have to. Love doesn't have to. But it finds a way. Grace to you this week. Grace through you this week. These do look rather good, I have to say.